My affair took a picture during the act and it spread like wildfire on social media. Now I'm divorced. You guys, I've been used. My affair uploaded a picture and a video of me on his AF, and somehow it spread to social media, and my friends and family, and worst of all, my husband saw it. Now I am divorced. How could I have been so foolish to trust that bastard? I should have seen the camera. I should have just stayed faithful to my husband. How did everything change so quickly in just a space of how many months? Everything was great. Everything was fine until I was lured to test the waters. My friend was telling me of how she was enjoying her relationship, and I was jealous. I was totally jealous and decided to do something reckless and foolish that had gotten me and my family in so much trouble. It wasn't supposed to go this way. I have ruined everything for my family and my life. It had just been another day being a rich housewife after an afternoon of shopping online at my favorite brand stores. I hadn't known my day was about to go south so fast. My husband had gotten back from work and I had been in the kitchen when he came in and pushed his phone into my face. The next thing I had seen was my butt in the whole screen and my affair getting in me from behind. I had taken the phone from my husband with shaky hands, and I had seen that it wasn't just a 2 seconds video or GIF. It was a full-on 45 minutes of me having sex with my affair. And then the pictures. It was so clear that it was my face and body that was in the pictures and the video. I couldn't even deny it if I wanted to. There was just no way to tell my husband that it was all a misunderstanding and it wasn't me in the pictures and videos. I was doomed. My husband began questioning me as to why my face and body was being used by a man that wasn't him. I could lie and say it was my doppelganger. There was at least one other of each person out there, right? But my husband wasn't going to believe me. I didn't even sound believable at that moment. My mouth was already shaking with tears, and I just got down on my knees immediately and began to plead for forgiveness. He couldn't send me away. My husband got livid and grabbed my arm and then dragged me out of his house. Whenever I ran to go back in while he was packing my luggage out, he would drag me back out again. By the time he was done throwing my clothes away, he dragged me out one last time and slammed the door in my face. I went to my father's house and couldn't bring my mouth to tell him what I had done. He was going to kill me. I got a call the next day that all the purchases I had made had been canceled, and then I got a call from my bank account manager that I didn't have any more access to my husband's money. And I had done a very foolish thing. I had used the money that was supposed to be for my father in his business deal to recently buy a house. I had hoped that I could just ask my husband for more money and he would have given it to me. After all, he had loved to provide for me. But now everything was going to go to shit, and all these had started from a little jealousy. Hi Redditors, you can think of me as Ava. I'm 28 years old. I want to share my experience as I see other people do on this platform. I can't tell my friends my side of the story because they are not talking to me currently and they'll judge me. At least telling you guys on here, none of you know me personally, so I won't feel your judgment. I'll refer to my ex-husband as James. That's not his real name, of course, and he was about 39 years old. James was the only son of my father's friend, so it was normal that they tried to link us up from the very moment we could say our ABCs. Obviously, we're the only children, so it was like a tradition to set us up. So that is what they did. Set us up right from the start. I hated his guts because he didn't strike me as the type of guy that could go all out for a person. Since I had understood my feelings as a young girl, I had always thought I was going to have the love I deserved from a man I loved. I don't know how I became this self-conceited and jealous person. You know when they say money changes people. I had never known I would be a test subject of that phrase. I guess I can say that money changed me. At least I can accept that fact. I just hope you all don't chastise me like you did the others from the comments I've read when you get to read how I had gotten to this point. Anyway, I was told by my father that I was going to get married immediately after college, an arranged marriage that didn't go with what I had planned for love and what I had hoped my family would look like. So from the very first day we got introduced as to be wed, I hated James. Don't be shocked that arranged marriages still happen in this century. It's something that is going to keep happening, especially among people with old money. I didn't like the fact that my father had arranged a boy for me to marry, but I couldn't say or do anything about it because that would risk me losing everything and being disowned by my father. I swallowed the fact that I was pained and went to have dinner the night after my graduation party with my husband's family. I went along with the wedding plans. I smiled and looked happy while my mother was planning the engagement party. She had already been changed by money, and I just didn't understand how she could risk my happiness for some business deal, but I didn't say anything. I was all smiles at my engagement party. I laughed, danced, and smiled, but I didn't like my husband. I didn't want to get married to him. My husband, on the other hand, had already taken over from his father and was already running the company and couldn't care less who he married. He was married to his business. I I think it was all these things that had made me do what I had done. This had been the setting stone. I got married to James in a wedding every girl dreamt of and would kill to have. But I didn't want it. I wasn't in love with the man I was marrying. Let me tell you guys the truth. We didn't say more than 10 words between each other during our wedding activities, and these 10 words included the vows. For those that might say, oh, you should have run away instead of getting into a loveless marriage or talked to your father about it. It wasn't that easy. It was never that easy. Everything had already been set, and I was just a pawn piece to my father. But I had wrecked and destroyed everything. Anyway, we got married, and so began my life. My loveless life. I was just a girl who wanted to feel loved. Like I said, James was already married to his business, and I was just an ornament piece planted in his house so he could say he had a wife. After our honeymoon, we went back to our normal lives, talking whenever he happened to stay long enough at home before leaving for the office. When I said money changed people, this was how I slowly began to change. James would give me money to make up for his lack of attention whenever I called him out on it. When I told him that I needed him at home more often, that we barely knew each other, my husband would give me his card and tell me to get myself something nice, and I would tell him all about it when he gets back from work. By the time he eventually got back from work, I would have slept off, and by the time I woke up, he had already left for the office. I had even accused him of cheating one time, and he had told me that was something he would never do. That was how my husband gave me access to his phone and basically his devices to prove that he would never cheat. This was also the day that he told me that I should never ever cheat on him, that I can lie to him or use his money to buy whatever, but I should never let another man into my bed. There would be dire consequences should I do that. My husband was a straightforward man, so I had taken his warning seriously. So this is how my marriage went: 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, till 5. I had stayed in a loveless marriage and had managed just fine because my husband threw money so easily at me. I was changed by money and became just like my mom. All I cared about was what was the latest brand and how I could get it. Online shopping became my therapy. I forgot my values because I thought I had money now. I loved being a housewife. I bought more things than a normal person used in a month in just one day. I can't disclose what my ex-husband had been into for privacy's sake. If not, that would have made you all understand the amount of money I was spending. My husband didn't complain though. I gave him what he wanted, a centerpiece wife who catered to his stomach and catered to him in bed. And I didn't want to cheat on him. He was providing everything I wanted and was fairly good in bed. What more could a woman want, Lowell? James took me on trips if I even complained that I got a headache. I guess that was his own way of showing love, by making sure I never lacked what I wanted, but I hadn't seen it that way. I had been too stubborn and blinded by having what I wished for on my own terms that I didn't see how good of a man my husband was. Sure, he hadn't been all that perfect, but he was okay, and I had ruined it all by doing the one thing he had told me not to do, all because of a little jealousy. I feel so ashamed typing this. I had ruined good things and turned my life upside down just because the idea of love I had in my head didn't match the one my husband showed me. I wanted what was out of my limits, only if there was a way to turn back the time. I would go back and appreciate all the things James did that I hadn't taken as an act of kindness. I recall one time his mother had been harassing me that I had gotten married for over 5 years and I had no proof to show for it. This has been about the time my father started having problems with his business, so of course James's mother started building contempt towards me and my family because we weren't as rich as we used to be. My father was going around borrowing from all his friends and the news had gotten to her, so she found the perfect opportunity to look down on me. And she used the fact that I hadn't conceived for James to drive her contempt further. I couldn't care less what the witch had to say, but James had stood up for me. But what had I done in appreciation? Made him hate me. Made those around me hate me. Lost the one true friend I had made that wasn't because of it. I told you guys that my mess up had started as a result of jealousy, and I've droned on long enough. I met a friend during one of the vacations that James had taken me to. We had hit it off, and it was the only friend I had made outside of my circle and outside of college. And I was so happy and excited. I think it was in Trinidad and Tobago that I met her when James and I had gone there to celebrate our 4th wedding anniversary. I'll call her Lisa for the sake of the story. Lisa was my age and a beautician. She owned a saloon, and at first we hadn't lived in the same city. I mean, she had lived in a different city when we met on vacation. We had texted once in a while after we had both returned to our individual lives after the vacation. It was like a checking up text. But then fast forward a year later, Lisa moved to my city because she had followed her boyfriend who had gotten a new job opportunity. So naturally we had met up. I didn't have anything better to do with my time, and she was new to my city, so I had to show her around. Lisa wasn't bothered by the fact that I spent so much money. Most of my friends usually called me out in it because they thought I was being a show-off. Lisa didn't mind, or at least she never showed it to me. And I had found a confidant in Lisa. We became close. She was way closer to me than all my friends, even the ones I had while growing up. She opened up her store, a beauty spa, and I had given her a massage chair as a store opening gift. If I had given her the money, she would have refused it, so I had to get her something that she couldn't turn away because I had already spent money on it. We went places together, and I introduced her to my family. They had seemed to like her, although my mother had her own sentiments, thinking Lisa was going to try and snatch my husband. Lol, I wish to God that was what had happened. Lisa had loved her boyfriend to pieces. Imagine changing cities and starting over because of your boyfriend. I had never imagined myself doing that. I introduced Lisa to my husband, and he liked her too. In his words, I had found someone that I could face and not hammer him for not trying to spend time with me. He was happy I had Lisa in my life so he could go about with his relationship with his business. Lisa was a good girl. She was supposed to be the cure to how much money had switched up my character. But once again, I messed up a good thing. Lisa and her boyfriend were the couple of the century. They loved each other to pieces. Or that was what I thought. It had been so easy. But they had looked in love. It was so sickening to watch whenever they had been together and I was present. Like they couldn't keep their hands off each other. Lisa had introduced me to her boyfriend at her store opening, and I had learned that he was a real estate agent and had moved to my city because there was something about great land investment. I can't recall what he had said. I had welcomed them, and he was very attractive and had a nice smile. I had even planned a double date with my husband and Lisa and her boyfriend. It was supposed to be a casual dinner and we would just enjoy the time, but from the moment Lisa bade her boyfriend walked in, I remember getting madly irritated. Because for one, they had come together as a couple while I was still waiting for my husband to join me at the restaurant. He hadn't even known I had planned something for today and had to clear his schedule. This was something I had been telling him for over 2 weeks. Lisa and her boyfriend had been holding hands and laughing at something, and something just got twisted inside me. They came and sat down at the table and had been making inside jokes that I obviously couldn't laugh at. We waited for my husband, and 30 minutes into the dinner, my husband still hadn't showed. I tried calling him and I was going straight to voicemail. It had looked like I was a pushover, someone that my husband couldn't take seriously. Guess when my husband decided to grace us with his presence? While Lisa and her boyfriend were seeing me off to my car. I had been so pained and embarrassed, and I didn't talk to him for like 2 weeks. And my husband, being his typical self, had thought that throwing money on me would be the solution, but not this time. Then Lisa had become so annoying, gushing about her boyfriend every time we hung out. She just couldn't shut up. She had the love I wanted, and I became envious of that. Telling me how her boyfriend was a godsend and told her he loved her every time. She always talked about him and their dream wedding and how she couldn't wait to marry him and spend the rest of their lives in love. I got so sick of it, and it led to our first ever quarrel. We had been having brunch at our favorite spot, and she started yapping about how her boyfriend had bought her a huge quartz ring and had inscribed their favorite quote on it. Trust me, my husband could afford even more than what her boyfriend earned over 100 times and could buy the ring she had over 1,000,000 times. But one thing my husband couldn't do was inscribe a quote. My husband couldn't even care less about my favorite color, not to talk of quote. Lisa was gushing all about it, and I couldn't hold it in. I told her what I thought of her and her flaunting her love in my face. I never flaunted my wealth in her face, and all she had done since she came here was show me what I was missing. I said some unkind words, and I left the spot I was at. I hated that she had that power on me. This was what my father had put me through. I was jealous, and I would admit, and I made the worst mistake from this jealousy. I slept with her boyfriend. Yes, Lisa's boyfriend. Money changed people, remember? Money could also buy people. It all just took knowing their price, and that was how Lisa's boyfriend was mine. I never intended for it to happen. I was jealous, and he was such an easy target. I had thought he loved her, but he was just a fool, and I was a bigger fool for doing that to my friend. It should never have happened. He had gotten my number from Lisa's phone, according to him, on the first day he texted me. He wanted to know what had happened between me and her and why she didn't want to talk about it. I had told him I didn't want to talk about it either. But however, he kept on persisting, and when I finally gave in, it led to more conversations between us. I had convinced myself it was just talk, from the point of a friend's concerned boyfriend. But then the talk started getting deep, and then he wanted to know everything about me. I was in the loop. He was caring. And I wanted to know what Lisa saw in him. I made the first move and flirted with him. He was so sweet, and I liked the way he talked about me. We could talk on call until the early hours of the morning. My husband never suspected a thing because this was when he was trying to merge with one of his companies. He was in focus mode, and I was busy falling in love with another man. While my husband was traveling and signing deals, I was planning how to meet with my best friend's boyfriend. I know I'm a horrible person. You don't need to tell me. I did the absolute worst thing a friend could do in this world. But then I had just been flowing with the vibes Lisa's boyfriend was giving me. I should have put a stop to it, especially when he started asking me for money. This was when we had moved on to going out on dates, and he discovered how much money I controlled. I had bought him gifts, of course, and I hadn't even slept with him at this time. I don't know what had just entered me. I had used my husband's money to buy this guy stuff. I took him shopping. I wanted to show my hand. It was like an addiction, showing off how much money I had and how I could buy him with just a sign of a check. I became conceited and proud and a show-off. And Lisa's boyfriend had been soaking up all the attention. He had told me that he was going to break up with Lisa, and then I could divorce my husband and we would live happily ever after. I had actually considered it. I had considered getting with him at some point. I don't know how much more foolish I could have been. I regret doing this. I was betraying my friend, and I didn't even feel one single ounce of remorse. I had wanted to feel it, to have what she had. Then Lisa's boyfriend had soaked up all the money, and he felt that we had gotten close enough to start asking me for money. It started with how he needed a small loan to complete the purchase for a property to resell. He paid back that amount, of course. Then he had moved on to how he needed more and a little more time to pay it. I had given him. I had the money and a husband who didn't care less how much I spent it, or so I thought. Until I had trouble with my husband. We had been eating dinner, and all of a sudden James asked why he was receiving notification that I had purchased menswears from the Balenciaga and Versace brands. What was I doing with men's clothing from those brands? I had been tongue-tied while I had thought up a viable excuse. Then I had said it was for my father's anniversary, and his birthday was this weekend, and he liked luxurious gifts, so I had to give him something from his favorite brand. My husband hadn't believed me, but he had decided not to argue with me. This was when I knew I had to be careful with Lisa's boyfriend, because my husband could find out in a moment. I was in deep already, and I couldn't swim out. I'm a very terrible person. I went after my best friend's boyfriend willingly, and I had landed myself in a very big mess. After the OF, karma had decided it was time for a little taste of my own medicine. I slept with Lisa's boyfriend long after, and I finally got a taste of what Lisa was getting. She was getting a lot, actually. Lisa's boyfriend was good in bed. Not long after, Lisa called me and said she would like to make amends and she needed her friend back. I didn't know what to do, so I went to have a little tete-a-tete with her, and she told me how she found out her boyfriend was seeing another woman, how he barely looked at her anymore, how her relationship was falling apart. And I had sat there and listened to her and tried to console her, knowing I was the cause of those things. And somewhere deep down, I didn't feel guilty. My husband stopped my access to my money and claimed there was a lot at stake with the new merger, and he needed to gather all the money he had to make this merger work. This meant no more unnecessary spending from his shopaholic housewife. My father had also ran into a crisis with the family company for the second time in the year, and had come to ask my husband for a loan to get him out of the bind. I knew this because my husband had put the money in the account he had created for me, and told me I could surprise my father with it on his birthday. It was gestures like this I had overlooked from my husband, all because I wasn't seeing the love. I hadn't known that people showed love in different ways. Wait, that's a fluke. I knew people showed love in different ways. I just didn't believe in those ways if it wasn't the way I knew. The way that Lisa's boyfriend had shown me. When my husband had kept me with no money, it had been Lisa's boyfriend that had been sending me money for my regular upkeep. I had thought it was a sweet gesture. I didn't know he was gearing up to ask for something big. Lisa, on the other hand, was planning to break it off with him and had told me about it. She wanted to do something to him that would make him regret cheating on her. I was supporting her out in the open. But whatever she and I discussed, I also discussed it with the boyfriend she was planning to break up with. I deserved to rot in the deepest and hottest part of hell for what I did. I was a menace, and I wronged both my friend and husband. Lisa's boyfriend popped the biggest question. He needed money to secure another property, over $2 million. I can't believe I had done it. He had told me that he would pay me back the complete amount once he resold it, and I had believed him. I had believed him just because he had provided the bare minimum, and I had seen it as a grand gesture. It was like my eyes had been fucked up, and all I could see was how he had done so much for me. This was someone I hadn't even known for up to a full year. He had told me that once he completed the sale of the property, he would break up with Lisa, and I would break up with my husband, and we would go on a trip somewhere far away, and I had believed him. I had actually believed him, Redditors. Men are just such bold and two-faced liars. I transferred the money I was supposed to give my father to support our dwindling family company to a stranger I had stolen from my best friend, all because I had been jealous of what they shared and wanted to feel it for myself too. I am the joke of the century, LOL. After I gave Lisa's boyfriend the money, we hung out a couple of times and slept with each other. This was when the OF video was taken, and then Lisa's boyfriend disappeared. My father's birthday passed, and I had lied to my husband that I had given him the money and how thankful he was. But in truth, the money was gone, and I knew I had been scammed. I didn't have any property, and I didn't have any money. Fast forward to present, my husband shoved me out of his house, and I moved back in with my parents. The police became more frequent at our house with each passing day. My father had dabbled in something, and I didn't know. He was owing a lot of people and was about to go to jail. He needed that money my husband had set aside for him, but I didn't have it. My husband wasn't answering my calls, and I was devastated. Then I got a call one day from Lisa, and then I had told her how everything had just turned upside down and my whole life was a struggle. She laughed. It was at this moment I knew she knew. Apparently, she had hacked her boyfriend's phone to find out who he was cheating with and and behold, it was her best friend who had everything in the world. She had been the one to leak the pictures and video to my husband, and she wasn't going to stop there. These were her words, not mine. And even though I had everything, I couldn't just stay content. I had to take the little that she had from me. I begged for her forgiveness and asked that we meet up, that I didn't know what had come over me. She dropped the call on me and told me to expect karma. The next thing I knew, I was called to my husband's lawyer's office and served divorce papers. My husband had just wanted to let it go peacefully without involving himself in the scandal that was surrounding my family. But I had wanted to get away with at least a quarter of his property. I told him I wanted a divorce settlement. Money changed people. I didn't know how I had gotten so greedy, but I needed money to get my father out of the mess he was in. My husband nodded his head and told me to come by the house the next day, that he would have my settlement ready. My father was already being tried in court, and the bank had already taken away our house and all the property my father owned. I went to see my ex-husband the next day, and in our garage was a car with money sitting prettily in 2 suitcases at the back seat. He handed me the keys and told me it was all mine, but I needed to go get my remaining things from upstairs. I ran upstairs happily and found that all my things in the room were gone. I came back outside to find my husband pouring fuel all over the car and lighting it on fire with the money inside and all my things. My clothes, my jewelry, everything I had purchased while I was married to him. Everything was ablaze. Then he told me that he would rather burn all the money he had than have my cheating ass touch a single dime of it. I got back home, and the next thing I saw were reporters outside my house. My father had been sent to prison for money laundering, but the reporters hadn't been there for my father. The video and pictures with my affair had been leaked, and they were there to interview me and catch me unawares for the local press. Everything was happening so fast, and I didn't know what to do. I had to run away from them. The next thing, the police were at my house. The pictures had shown I had affiliation with Lisa's boyfriend, and my ex-husband had confirmed it and sent them after me. Apparently, Lisa's boyfriend was involved in scamming people under the guise of selling properties. I was brought into the station, and after multiple times of proving my innocence, which my ex-husband made difficult, I had gone to the station for over 3 weeks trying to prove my innocence. My mother had gone back to her family in Alaska because she couldn't stomach the press, and after everything was over, I went to join her too. I was penniless and broke, and my husband made sure that scandalous picture stayed online and haunted me. It's been over 2 months since all these happened, and yet the whole experience is still fresh. I couldn't get a job because whenever I went to apply for one, it was like a picture would surface again, and then the company would tell me they couldn't hire me. It was like my ex-husband was watching me to make sure I never moved forward with my life. I shouldn't have done it. I should have never felt jealous. My life is over now because of how I had felt not loved enough from the beginning of my relationship. I'm sorry, Lisa. Not that you'll ever read this. I just needed to get it off my chest. I'm sorry for being the worst friend in the world. Hopefully I grow past this, but I know it will haunt me to the very end. I regret not stomping that feeling of jealousy I had from the beginning. Why had I been jealous when I had everything? That's a question I'll never be able to answer. I have to live with the stigma of what I had done, and I needed to tell someone because keeping it bottled inside was making me go crazy from overthinking and wishing I could turn back the time. If I could turn back time, I would have done things right. I started working on my mother's parents' farm since I had nothing better to do, and my grandparents insisted my mother and I must earn our keep in the house or they would boot us out. They didn't like us living with them because when my dad had money, he never gave them anything. And my mother hadn't even thought to ask about the welfare of her parents. But they couldn't turn us away because we were family. I wish I hadn't done such an evil thing to the people that mattered the most.